Hello guys, my name is Lucas and welcome. Today we're gonna do a quick tutorial on how to create a pop-up window with different options. And this pop-up window is gonna have different messages and different functions depending on which part of our game creates this pop-up. So for example, if we wanna change the color of the background, we press here, it's gonna ask us, do you really wanna change the color? Then we can press sure, why not? The colors change. We maybe say maybe not, and nothing's gonna happen. And if we press another button, for example quit, we're gonna have a different message asking us, do you really want to quit? Then we can press no if we want to stay here, or we can press bye bye and it's gonna close our application. Oh, and before we begin, one more thing to notice is that whenever we have this pop-up here, we cannot press on other buttons. And for that, we're simply using a UI element that is blocking other UI elements. Hey guys, if you want to know step by step how I made this UI and how I set up the canvas, make sure you go check the video with the link on the top right corner, and the link is also in the description of this video. So now we created our UI. Now we have to create a script for our pop-up, because our pop-up needs to be able to rename these buttons, rename the message, and assign the functions to the different buttons. So let's go ahead and create a script. I'm gonna call it Popup, simply Popup. All right, so we're here in the code. The first thing we wanna do, since we're working with UI, is I'm going to duplicate this line, Control D, and I'm going to add UI. Now we want to have references for each of our buttons, and you could do this through the script here on the start function, but I'm just going to do it with some public variables here, or you can even make them private, but use a like serialized field so that later on you can assign them in the inspector. So we're going to have a button 1, button 1, button 2, and we also want to have some text, because we're going to have 3 texts, the message in the pop-up window, but also the 2 buttons. So we can have like button 1 text, button 2 text, and pop-up text. So we're going to have those 3 texts. Now that we have those fields, we can assign each element in our pop-up. So for instance here, the button 1, I'm going to say the no button there. The yes button is going to be button 2. Again, you could have a dynamic array of buttons and assign each button through the hierarchy here in your code. We're gonna, if you want to learn how to do that, just let me know in the comments and I'll explain it to you. Then we have button 1 text, which is this one. Button 2 text, which should be this one. And then the pop-up text, which is the text here in this panel. Just making sure. All right, there we go. So now that we have assigned those variables here in our inspector, what we want to do is save this in our resources folder, because we don't want to have only one pop-up that we're going to be changing. We're going to be able to create multiple pop-ups if it's necessary. So for example, you lost connection. Do you want to retry connecting? No or yes. Maybe someone sent you something, you want to open it now? Yes or no? And those pop-ups could be stacking on top of each other. That's not a problem. So what we're going to do here in the assets folder is going to create a new folder called resources. And whatever we put here in the resources folder, we can load during the game from our resources.load asset or something like that. So here I'm going to create another folder called UI, because I want to have my UI elements here. And we're going to drag Popup into this folder. So now that we have it here, we can actually we can actually delete it from our scene. So I'm just going to delete that. Now let's go back to our code. So now we have these variables and these references, but we want to set them somehow. We want to give them actions. We want to give them messages. So I'm going to create this function called init or initialize, and we're going to pass different parameters to this. So one parameter that we can pass is a transform for the canvas that we're using. So in which canvas we want to initialize this pop-up. All right, that's a valid thing that we want to take care of. So now the next thing is going to be the text, like the message on the pop-up. So pop-up message. And then we need another string for button 1. So I'm just going to write it like this, button 1 text. And we want the same for button 2. And finally, we want an action. So to use an action, we need to tell our program that we're using system. All right, and this library contains something called action. The other thing you can do is simply type system.action, and it's the same, right? So we want an action, and I'm going to call it action. And we're going to dig into this soon. But first, let's initialize the messages, all right? So very simple. The pop-up message, what we want to do is grab the pop-up text, pop-up text, dot text, which is like what is showing, and we're going to set it up to pop-up message. And we're going to do the same for the buttons. So button 1 text dot text equals btn 1 text, and same for button 2. So we're going to set those messages. Now we also need to initialize the canvas. So we're going to be placing this inside a canvas. If we just instantiate it somewhere, it's not gonna even show up in our screen. So we need to set it as a child of this canvas. Transform dot set parent. We want to set it as a child of this canvas. But then we need to reset the scale. So transform dot local scale equals vector 3 dot 0, not 0, 1. If we make 0, it's gonna disappear. So 1, so it's gonna adjust back at the scale of our canvas. And let's keep it like that for now. But just keep in mind that you need to set it to a canvas. And finally, we're going to give the action. So, oh, and by the way, we have an action for button 1. We could have a list of actions. For now, I'm always going to consider that the button 1 is going to be like no and do nothing and just close the pop-up. An action for the second button is going to be an action that we want to do. So we want to change the color. We're going to pass that action to the yes button. All right. So button 1 is always going to be closed. So button 1 is gonna be closed. So on click, we want to use on click here. So on click, we can add a listener, and we're going to use a lambda expression to do this. So just follow along with me. Here we can write our function, which is going to be just destroy this pop-up. So game object destroy this game object. All right, and that's gonna get rid of everything and nothing's gonna happen. Now for button 2, which is gonna be our accept button, our sure why not button, we do on click dot add listener. We're gonna do the same thing here, but this time we want to call the action. So this action here that we're passing as a parameter from other scripts in our game. So the change color script is going to pass a function, an action to change the color. The quit button is going to pass an action that actually quits the game. And that's how we can have different actions in that button, and having different functions for something that seems to be the same thing. All right, so let's keep it like this for now. We don't need this or this. And all right, now let's create the change color function, and it should be pretty easy. So we go to our bottom menu. I want to choose my button change color. I think it was this one. And you can rename them, but I'm sure it's this one. Add component, and I'm going to make a script called change color. Again, I already did this, but I'm just doing it again. I did it once, so I know it works. So we have a change color script. So it's going to be very simple. First, let's tell the program we're using the UI library. Here on start, we want to give a function to the button. So button equals get component. And you don't even need to do this. You can do it directly on the get component button and then add the listener. I just like doing it like this. Button.onClick.add listener. And we're going to do the same we do. But here we're going to pass an action. All right. So how do we create an action? I already told you we need to use the system library. And it's very easy. We just make an action. I'm going to call it action. And we use a lambda expression too. So I'm just going to make it like this. And here we're going to grab the camera.main, and we're going to do background color equals to random dot color. Wait, can we have random dot? I thought random library had a. Oh yeah, sure. We need to specify that is the Unity engine dot random dot color HSV, because when we start using system, then there is ambiguity between random from the Unity engine library and the system library. So just tell it that you're using it from the Unity engine. So there you go. And this is a function, so we need to call it. That is the action that we're going to pass to our pop-up in our function. So now the next thing we want to do is actually create the pop-up when we click this. And we could create it here, or we could have a UI controller that is going to be in charge of creating this pop-up. So let's do that first, and we're gonna be back here. But it's basically going to be something like create pop-up, and then init pop with parameters, text, and action. Oh, and also the canvas. That's basically what we want to do. But to create the pop-up, we're going to make this in another script. I want to have a universal script that's going to take care of UI elements. So I'm just going to create here a create empty object. I'm going to call it main. And here I'm going to have scripts like my UI controller and other things like that. UI controller is going to be a new script. So now we have this UI controller here, and it's going to be very simple. Again, we want to have a static reference to this so we can access it from everywhere. So I'm going to just type public static UI controller. And I'm sorry I'm bashing my keyboard, but my keyboard is a little bit broken. So if I don't type hard enough, letters just repeat a lot, and you can see it's happening a lot during the tutorial. So okay, let's continue. I'm gonna call this instance. So this static instance, I can access it from everywhere because it's static and it's public. And here on star, we're going to say if instance is not null, that means we already have an instance. We're going to do the following. We're going to GameObject.destroy this .GameObject, and we're going to return. And if we didn't return, then we're going to set the instance equals to this instance. There we go. Now we don't need this. All right, so here we're going to create our pop-up. So we're going to make a public function, and instead of being void, I think we can actually return the pop-up component, and then we can initialize using that. So pop-up. Remember, this is what we're returning to the function that calls this function. So we're going to do create pop-up. All right, and it's going to be fairly wait. Yeah, we need to return something. So we're going to do all right, GameObject pop up GameObject equals to instantiate, and here is the path from our resources folder. You remember that we had this resources folder with the UI and then with the pop-up element inside. Now we're going to use that. So instantiate resources, and this is something we have here, load resources dot load, and then we give it a path. So in this case, our path is I think it was simply UI and slash and then pop-up. That's our path to our game object. And finally, we need to tell Unity that this is as a game object. All right, we have that. We created it because we instantiated it. And now we can actually return pop-up GameObject.getComponent in the pop-up script that we have. There you go. So now when we create this, we're gonna return a pop-up script from a pop-up prefab that we instantiated on our scene. Now if we go back to change color here, now we can actually create this pop-up. So I'm going to make a pop-up. I'm gonna call it pop-up, and it's going to be equals to UI controller dot instance dot create pop-up. There you go. Now we can initialize that pop-up with our desired message, because remember, change color will have different messages as the quit function, for example. So down here, we're gonna grab pop-up dot init, and what are our parameters? The first parameters is a canvas. So here in UI controller, we could have a reference for our main canvas, for example. We could use that. So public transform main canvas, and we're gonna set it in the inspector, but for now we can just use it. So save that here. UI controller dot instance dot main canvas. That's what we're gonna use for this pop-up. So then we have to pass the text, which was the text for the pop-up message. You can see here the different parameters. So the pop-up message is gonna be, do you really want to change color? And sorry, my keyboard is really broken. I need to buy a new one. That's the first, the second parameter. The third parameter here is button one text. So we're gonna go with something simple like maybe not. Then the second button, which we said is gonna be our yes button, we're gonna say like sure. And I'm not very creative. I did that on the previous example. And finally, the action. That action is what's going to like basically give functionality to the button. So we created the action here. So we're just gonna pass that. Action. And there we go. So wait, we have a problem? Oh, we didn't pass a comma there. There you go. All right, there you go. So we passed the text for the pop-up, the button 1, button 2, and the action that changes the color of the camera to a random color. All right, can we try this yet? Button and the action and the text. I think we can try it. So let's go back here. Let's see if there is any errors. There seems to be no errors, and we can just play this. So when we press change color, yeah, we created the pop-up, but we're not seeing it anywhere. And we can keep pressing these and multiple pop-ups are gonna appear. Let's see what's the problem. All right, the pop-up was not set into the canvas because the canvas is null. We haven't set the canvas in the UI controller as a reference here. You see, it's none. So we're just gonna drag this canvas here. And that was our problem. So now that our main canvas has a reference to a canvas on the scene, we can actually change color and all right, we created the pop-up, but it's down here on the bottom left. What's our problem? If you notice here, we have these parameters that we want to fix. So to fix this, you could try something like setting the local position to 0, but there's going to be another problem. But let me just show you local position or anchored position, because we're dealing with rect transforms, equals to vector 3.0. What's going to happen now is that we're going to actually have it in the middle. Let's try it again. We're going to have the pop-up in the middle, but if you notice, we're going to have multiple pop-ups because we are missing that background that was blocking all the other elements. And that's because here we're not stretched. You see the left has this. If all this was 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, then you will see the black background that was supposed to block the other buttons. And by the way, we can do this already. But there are several problems with this. So first, let's fix the background, the black background that was blocking the UI elements. To do that, we're not going to do transform.local position, but we're going to do get component rect transform, and we have a property called offset min, and this is a vector 2, so we're just going to set it to vector 2.0 because we want to have 0 on those here. We want to have left, top, right, and bottom. We want to make those 0. So we are going to set them to 0 like this, and we're going to do the same but for the offset max. All right, so offset max is going to be 0 as well. Now let's try this one more time, and we should get the black rectangle to stretch across the screen. Change color, and there you go. Now we cannot keep pressing other buttons because our pop-up element is correctly stretched across the screen. Now, what happens if we press maybe not? Well, that's our close pop-up function. Nothing happens, we just close this window. What happens is if we press sure, we change the color. But wait, this is supposed to be closed when we press sure. So what we're gonna do is go here to button 2 on click add listener, and we're going to do the same that we do on button 1, and we're just gonna paste it after the action. So after our action happens, we're gonna destroy the game object. And that's a simple way that we can close the pop-up when we choose the option. So change color. Do you want to change the color? Sure, we changed the color and the pop-up also was closed. Awesome, we're getting there. Actually, we're almost done. So we have that, and now let's quickly do the second button, which allows it to quit our application, just for the sake of completion. So button number 2, add component, we're gonna do just a quit script. There we go. So it's gonna be very similar to our change color function. We're gonna create an action and create a pop-up, just like this. and actually we don't even need this anymore. I mean, we never needed it, the update function, and we're gonna have something very similar for our quit script. We're gonna remove this as well. So on start, we're just gonna assign that function to it. Remember, we need the UI library, and we also need the system library. Now we have the action. Now the action is not gonna be change the color of the camera. Of course, it's gonna be application.quit. And this, for example, will be very useful if you're making a mobile game. All right, and now here we're gonna add the function on click to this button. We want to have different messages. Are you sure you want to quit? And stay here and bye, or bye-bye, whatever. And the action is gonna be this one. So it's gonna simply call application.quit. So we save this, and it's already assigned to this quit button. So now we should have different pop-ups with different messages. So let's try this. We're gonna press play. Let's try it one by one. So change color. Can we keep pressing? No. Do you really want to change the color? Maybe not. Change color. Want to change? Sure, we change. And then we want to quit. Are you sure you want to quit? Stay here. You sure you want to quit? Bye-bye. And if we were on our mobile game or in our executable application, it should have quit the game. So that's it. That's how you make a pop-up, a dynamic pop-up that can receive different functionality from different buttons that call, or different parts of your game that create that pop-up. You could stack these pop-ups if you want, like as I said, if you have events like wait completed, or someone sent you something, or you lost connection, different things, you could have those messages stacked. You could have only your no button, or like your okay, I understand, close this for like just information, etc. You could use the principles that we learned in this tutorial, basically this pop-up. I'm gonna upload the this project if you want to take it and just play with it. So thank you so much guys for watching. I know I haven't uploaded tutorials in a very long time, but hopefully you're not gonna mind that I took a very long break, and I'm going to start making these kind of tutorials again. Guys, if you have any request for a feature that you want in your game, let me know in the comments, and I'm gonna try to do it if possible. I want to stop making long series, because usually those long series always end up into, like, you know, being messy or something like that. So I'm just want to focus on specific features for some time, like this pop-up menu. I actually had a list of other things I want to do, like a better save and load system, daily login rewards for mobile games, and things like that. Hopefully you are gonna be interested in watching those. Please, please, please share these videos with your friends. Tell them I'm back one more time, and hopefully we are going to be seeing at least one video every week with tutorials like this. Thank you so much guys. Please stay safe, and I will see you on a next video.